This is the 5th episode in our latest season featuring missing persons across the United States and the second in a 2-part series. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are solely the interviewee's own. All individuals are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. This episode discusses child endangerment, violence, substance use, and brief mention of suicidal ideation. Listener discretion is advised. If you or a loved one is struggling with suicidal thoughts, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255 or dial 911 if there is an immediate emergency or crisis. This is the Fallline. Last time, we began the story of Arden Pepion, the youngest daughter of Aaron and Rhonda Pepion, and one of 4 girls. Arden grew up in Browning on the Blackfeet Reservation in Montana. She was 3 years old when she went missing on April 22, 2021, from the Two Medicine River area, about 20 minutes southeast of Browning. She'd been taken there by Hahawks VL, the boyfriend of her maternal aunt, Kimberly Higgins. We spoke with 2 of Arden's family members, Irene, her paternal grandmother, and Asia, her older cousin, who'd been one of her primary caregivers. In the fall of 2020, Arden and her sisters had been placed with their maternal family by social services, which cut off contact with their paternal side. By the time she disappeared, they hadn't seen her in 8 months, and they didn't know she was out at Two Medicine until it was too late. Hahawks VL told investigators that he'd taken Arden to an informal shooting range, a gravel pit roughly 20 yards from the riverbank in a wooded area off Josho East Road. He said that when he looked up from reloading his gun, she was gone. He claimed he spotted her footprints in the snow and that they led toward the river. Yet, law enforcement was not called for nearly 5 hours. That delay devastated family and drew fierce criticism from the community. When the call finally came, Irene and Asia rushed to Two Medicine to join Arden's father, Aaron. A massive search was already underway. More than 150 community members, alongside helicopters and divers and drones. The early days of the investigation were a flurry of activity, with new information coming in faster than Arden's family could keep up with it. The clothing description initially given to searchers had to be revised. Asia told us that it was her understanding that the items from the original description had been found inside VL's truck, though we were not able to independently confirm that account. What we do know is that the description changed, and the family was left with serious questions about why. What came next only deepened those questions. On April 25th, one of Arden's boots was recovered from the river, and Asia said that she felt a complicated relief in that moment, that maybe now there would be closure, that Arden could finally be brought home. But that wasn't the case. Days passed with no sign of her, and as Irene told the Missoulian, the question stayed with her. Quote, "Where is she? Did she really go in the river?" We'll continue that story today, and we'll also hear from Rhonda Grant Connelly, founder of Blackfeet MMIP, whose own nephew, Matthew Rattlesnake Grant's murder we've covered on the show, and who has been one of the most tireless advocates for Arden's family since the beginning. But first, what happened when the official search came to an end? At this point, we should note that while the search for Arden continued, efforts had also begun on another missing persons case, the disappearance of Leo Wagner, who vanished on the Blackfeet Reservation on April 27, 2021. Leo, who was 26 years old, was last seen in the town of Babb, which is about 40 miles from Browning and within the boundaries of the Blackfeet Nation reservation. So there were 2 searches that overlapped, both keeping the other missing person in mind as groups methodically walked large areas of the reservation. It was during that time that Arden's boot was discovered in Two Medicine. As Irene and Asia pointed out, that gave their family a strange and sad kind of hope. They didn't want news that Arden had drowned, but the not knowing had been eating at all of them. But a day passed, and then another, and then another. Though the family, especially Arden's father Aaron, went out and supported the search day and night, another discovery didn't come. And per KRTV, the official search was scaled back after 10 days. They reported that, quote, "A news release from Blackfeet Law Enforcement Services says searchers have covered 20 miles on land and 40 miles on water in the search for 3-year-old Arden. We also know that on May 10, 2021, the search for Leo Wagner was scaled back too. There had been evidence found in his case as well. As the Charlie Project explains, quote, a burglary was reported at a cabin near Big Nose Bay on May 2nd. Wagner's family identified clothing and items belonging to him at the cabin, and it appeared a severe injury had occurred. There was mention of eventually searching other areas in both cases. That's based on multiple news sources and family accounts. Arden's parents were not informed ahead of time that official search efforts in her case would be scaled back. The lack of available law enforcement to run a long-term operation is something we discussed in the last episode, and it's understandable that resources were stretched thin. But for the Wagner and Pepion families, that time to organize the community and to plan for the coming weeks of continued effort, it would have been helpful. The Pepions had no choice. They began to work with the help of friends and neighbors and private outside groups. Arden Pepion told the Missoulian, quote, we'd like more background. We'd like a better timeline. I want justice and I want answers. When we spoke with Rhonda Grant Connelly about the early search for Arden, she recalled several things.
The first day, they had the National Guards in. They had several other communities that joined in, and I think even they had people from Alstom Air Force Base, and there was quite a few people out there in search of her. And then it then all of a sudden, drilled down to nothing. I don't think they were involved as much as they should have been. And just like Leo, he didn't really get any recognition, and no one ever really seemed to put out really a lot of effort.
But Rhonda kept trying, with a small crew that sometimes only included fellow searchers Diana Bird and Tana Bradford. Sometimes, she says, she even dove into the water herself, fully dressed, to try and search for anything that could help the family. And then, on May 18th, the outside help that the Pepions had worked to organize arrived, and the new search began. According to the Missoulian, 2 teams, one of which included Kinto Canine LLC, run by Pete Fuller, began to scour the area with drones, trained dogs, and other resources. And that paid off. Within weeks, the team allegedly found additional belongings of Arden's in the wilderness, miles from the river, and separate from that boot that had been recovered on April 25th. We don't know precisely what was found, but one thing that's been made clear is that the sweatshirt that she was reported as wearing was not among the items recovered. And that distance, it might point to a story beyond the river. As Pete Fuller told the Missoulian, quote, because the area she went missing from is an active spot for wildlife, namely mountain lions and bears, the possibility of her being lost to a cat or a bear is strong too. Many locals were glad to assist in any way they could, including allowing searchers onto private land. But that was not the case for everyone. In June of 2021, KRTV reported that 2 unnamed individuals were, quote, arrested on Saturday, June 5th, after reportedly assaulting a person involved in the continuing search for missing child Arden Pepion. Per KRTV, quote, Blackfeet Law Enforcement Services said in a news release that officers received reports involving an assault and intimidation with a firearm. Officers investigated and made 2 arrests. KRTV reported that after the incident, Blackfeet Law Enforcement Services stationed an officer at the search site to help protect the participants. While KRTV did not name the people who were arrested, Asia told us that she and her family knew all about it. She alleges that they were family members of Hahawks VL and that some of their land abuts the area where Arden was last seen.
They would come out when we would have issues with Hahawks' family because his family has land out there and a trailer.
And they weren't letting y'all search on the land?
No. So when my family first started, they would not let nobody on their land at all. They were starting to get to the point they were threatening my uncle and my grandmother with guns.
When were people allowed to search on the land, or have they been able to?
They still have not been able to. When that first happened, nobody wanted him to be there. I remember one time he had shown up. I wasn't where the group was, the family group, but I had seen him show up, and I don't know what had happened there, but I just had seen him and Kim. They just left. And then I had walked over and asked who that was. And that's when I finally knew how he looked. When they said who it was and that they had told him that they didn't want him there. And so after that, him and his family would watch the searchers. They would be up on the hill. They would be where their land is. And nobody on that road had a problem with searchers searching on their land. They said, go ahead. Everybody gave the green light except for them. They were the only ones who had a problem with people going on their land to search for Arden. The police started to get mad when my family would call when things would happen, because they would say that there's nothing they can do because that is their land. My family would literally have to be in groups together just to make sure that nothing happened, because there are videos too. I don't know if they've gotten out there, but there are videos of his family pulling up to my uncle, and my uncle has his backpack on and he's just going through searching. And she had pulled out a gun on my uncle and she was waving it around and she was yelling at him.
About being in the area?
Yeah, about searching in the area and saying how they need to stay off their land. And in the video, she's just cussing at him. That video had surfaced, and a lot of people from our community, they got involved in their own ways. They were asking on the videos and on the posts that the other family made, asking why they were doing what they're doing and why not let my family search if there was nothing to hide. And they had no explanation as to why. They just said because that's their land. That was their only explanation of why they didn't want no one to search on their land. People from the community, they started to comment and ask, well, where's that baby? Why are you starting problems with this family when they're looking for this baby? They were just saying all kinds of things pertaining to what was going on. And they were just wanting to know where Arden was.
The early days of June brought other news that we can verify across multiple sources. According to the Missoulian, arrest warrants and formal charges were filed in Blackfeet Tribal Court on June 3, 2021, against Tahawks VL and Kimberly Higgins. VL was charged with, quote, negligent endangerment and, quote, child neglect for allegedly failing to monitor a toddler in hazardous circumstances, specifically outdoors near a river at night. This neglect charge also cited his delay in contacting authorities and his departure from the location. Kimberly Higgins was charged with, quote, accountability for failing to alert law enforcement promptly after discovering the child was missing in dangerous conditions. After VL and Higgins posted their respective bail amounts of $1,600 and $1,000 on June 14th, their trial was scheduled for September 15th. A follow-up from KRTV reported that both VL and Higgins initially appeared in court on June 16th and entered pleas of not guilty on all counts. This report detailed the potential sentencing limits for the charges, noting that, quote, negligent endangerment carries a maximum of 9 months of incarceration, while, quote, child neglect is punishable by up to 15 days in jail. Additionally, the accountability charge against Higgins carries a maximum sentence of 1 year. We'll get more into the complexity of charging and sentencing in tribal court later in this episode. What's important now is that while these arrests have been made, Arden's family was continuing their search. By July of 2021, the official participation had been over for some time. But according to NBC, Arden Pepion had been out almost every day looking for his daughter. The Missoulian wrote that Arden had been using an underwater camera to scan the riverbed, despite the thick brush and the beaver dams. He was also critical of the official response, telling the paper, quote, they might have good intentions, but they need better training. By August, Arden's case had made it to NBC Nightly News, and a crew arrived at the reservation to cover the community efforts. Arden expressed frustration with what felt like a lack of urgency. He explained, quote, "To tell you the truth, yes, it seems like they're, just another native death." And that hurt. As Aaron said in that interview, quote, "She's just a baby." Search volunteer Tana Bradford said that on the reservation, the missing are often forgotten once the initial search ends. And Diana Bird, who we told you about last episode, described the constant fear of raising children in an area where they might simply vanish. She told NBC, quote, "You think your own kids might end up disappearing, and you might not come home." Asia told us that their family was feeling those effects in many ways, including trouble processing their own extended grief.
I remember that it was so heartbreaking and so hard that I had fallen into a really bad addiction. I was just drinking a lot during that time. I remember that from the morning until I would open my eyes, she would just be on my mind, and I just felt like I couldn't handle it. I was in a really bad place, and that's all I would do for a month straight. I had done that, and it ended with I almost had taken my life, and I'd went off to treatment to help myself. And when I'd gotten back, I had just decided to keep myself sober and try to cope with everything the best I could. And everybody was still looking, everybody was still out there searching.
By September of 2021, Arden's friends and neighbors rallied in a major way to support the family's efforts. Some had never stopped, of course, but with Arden's 4th birthday coming up on September 5th, it was important to many in the community to make arrangements for a large-scale effort. According to the Independent Record, a new and organized search effort was set for the 5th. Diana Bird told the paper, quote, "We want to let Arbana and Aaron know that we'll continue the search no matter what, so they can move on." Searchers gathered for a prayer before they began and worked throughout the day. Per KRTV, flowers were scattered across the river to celebrate Arden's life. There was also renewed focus on attracting attention to a substantial reward in Arden's case. As KRTV reported on her birthday, the Blackfeet Tribal Business Council had, quote, "approved a reward of $10,000 that summer in hopes that it would lead someone to come forward with information. To our knowledge, that reward is no longer available today. But at the time, Asia says the family appreciated it, the combined effort, from donations to support the search and flyer production and social media shares and on-the-ground help. They felt that love from their neighbors. People even came from out of town to help, sometimes flying for hours to join the search efforts. Arden was also acknowledged at the annual walk in honor of Ashley Loring Heavyrunner, a young woman from the Blackfeet Nation who disappeared in 2017. Her sister, Kimberly Loring, told the Independent Record, quote, "Encouragement is oxygen for the soul. No one should have to go through this alone. I'm familiar with searching with no one. So we want to rally around Arden and her family. We want them to feel supported." They also received help from the organization Medicine Wheel Ride, which sent extra search support to the reservation. Volunteer recovery teams from the Four Corners area also visited to help, joining forces with Diana Bird's newly formed search and rescue team, Holding Hope. By the summer of 2022, all of these volunteers had made the effort to find Arden, but there was still no sign. Part of the family's difficulties stemmed from the after effects of the charges against and eventual conviction of Hahaks VL. That decision had come down in October of 2021. According to the Independent Record, he, quote, pleaded guilty in Blackfeet Tribal Court to negligent endangerment and was sentenced in relation to Arden Pepion's disappearance. The charges against Arden's aunt, Kimberly Higgins, were dropped in what we understand to be part of the conditions of VL's guilty plea. Per the record, another stipulation was a dismissal of one of VL's charges, namely child neglect. His sentence was 9 months of house arrest and a fine of $500. His house arrest was not applicable to work, which he would still be able to attend. Arden's family was given time to read victim impact statements, but it didn't feel like enough. As Arden's mother Arbana said, quote, "This does not feel like a step towards justice." Asia told us that the house arrest especially frustrated them because their local law enforcement do not have ankle monitoring equipment. Per the BIA, Many nations do have that capability, and because we weren't able to speak with Blackfeet law enforcement, we could not verify their individual equipment. One thing that has surprised outsiders who followed Arden's case is the light sentence that VL received. To be frank, it is light, but that's in many ways due to the federal limitations placed on tribal courts. According to the ICRA, or the Indian Civil Rights Act of 1968 and the 2010 Tribal Law and Order Act, tribal courts are generally restricted to a maximum of 1 year of imprisonment and a $5,000 fine for any single offense. There are enhanced exceptions that can lengthen a sentence, but those have to meet certain specific requirements, including outside legal participation. Major crimes like murder are generally shifted to the federal jurisdiction. While that reality is well known to Arden's family, they still felt saddened and angry.
We were angry. We were very angry because that's not all he should have gotten. She's missing. She's a baby. You get child endangerment for just small things or just certain things in town. But to have lost somebody's child and not know where they are, that's what they gave him? Probation and house arrest? That does not make any sense. I felt like that was the last time they were ever going to try and help us get the justice for her, because it seemed like after that, any calls we made, any calls my family made to the law enforcement, they wouldn't show up. They just stopped coming.
The Missoulian reported that in July of 2022, the BIA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, officially took over Arden's case, and Leo Wagner's case too. This move was preceded by more than a year of appeals to the Presidential Task Force of Missing and Murdered American Indians and Alaska Natives, specifically to Operation Lady Justice, then headed by Interior Secretary Deb Haaland. A year before, in July of 2021, the Missoulian reported that a family advocate, Lydia Lerma, had specifically reached out about Arden's case. She said, quote, "Apart from Arden's age, this case was striking because there were so many leads that point in such different directions, and that no stone should be left unturned." Per NBC, Deb Haaland's task force was designed exactly for situations like Arden's and the other missing among the Blackfeet Nation, like Leo and Ashley Loring Heavy Runner. According to the Great Falls Tribune, then Blackfeet Chairman Timothy Davis expressed that, quote, "Montana has an appalling rate of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls cases." He went on to say that, quote, "Meaningful action must be forthcoming. Good words don't bring the missing home or justice to the victims. This tragedy is being compounded and is escalating due to the inadequate and underfunded resources for law enforcement in Indian country." Those are steps forward. But the passage of time, without knowing what really happened, it's hard on families. That's something that Rhonda has always highlighted to us, the pain of having absolutely no answers. And Arbana, Arden's mother, struggled with not knowing. She focused on her memories of Arden. She told the Missoulian that she dreamed of her daughter in an eagle's nest, guiding them somewhere, to her. But tragically, Arbana would not live to see her daughter found. Arbana's cause of death was not publicly released, but friends and family announced that Arbana died in October of 2022, at home and surrounded by her family. Her loss rocked the community that had formed around Arden's loved ones. Diana Bird spoke with the Rapid City Journal about Arbana. Quote, "She went in places that were really scary. When the water was high, she dove in there. They tied her to a rope, and she just had to look underwater and feel around and see if her baby was there. We watched her do all this stuff, and there's no reason that we couldn't keep her legacy going. She wanted us to find her baby, and she wanted to help people." Based on what Diana told the Journal, Arbana died on the same day that another search for Arden was to take place. The family tells us that all of the girls have been back in Aaron's custody for years now, and that he's raising them to remember their mother, Arbana, and to remember Arden too. But it hasn't been easy. They've been in a cycle of grief and loss that is difficult for adults to process, much less children. And they still don't have answers regarding what happened to their sister. Law enforcement's public stance has been that Arden likely drowned, and that may be true. But with so little to go on and reporting that other items have been found miles away, the family cannot help but consider other answers. The community has continued to support the Pepions, even though funding has been tight, and sometimes even non-existent. NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, has released an age-progressed photo of Arden for her 6th birthday. In August of that same year, Diana Bird told the Daily Montanan that, quote, cadaver dogs have gone to the same point several times, and a scuba diving team went down and didn't find anything. But, quote, we always hope. We always think the best. You read stories where people got into the water and they found them 10 feet away from where they went in, maybe 5 years later. We always hope that's the case. University of Montana forensics team member Meredith Snow agreed, telling the paper that, quote, conditions change and suddenly you can find things that you wouldn't have before. The river itself made that difficult. Diana Bird's search and rescue team complained of a lack of access to funding in December of 2023 when they were tackling, quote, a specific area near the River Eddy. When searchers tried to dig, river silt filled in immediately. They said they needed more hands and better tools. That's one of the many reasons advocates approached the Montana legislator in support of House Bill 18. The 2023 bill, sponsored by Representative Tyson Runningwolf, was meant to create a missing persons response team training grant program, something that would be of benefit to advocates across tribal nations and the state at large. The Billings Gazette quoted both Diana and Rhonda Grant Connelly, who testified on behalf of that bill. Rhonda testified that, quote, I cannot stress enough how beneficial this bill would be for all reservations and missing Indigenous people. We are in need of proper equipment and training personnel. And advocate Tana Bradford explained, quote, when we started our own little search team for Baby Arden, we had no resources, training, or funding. We used our own money, our own vehicles, our own time, taking days off work. With your support on House Bill 18, a search and rescue team can be put into place with a structured protocol. The grant would allow for up to $61,000 for those search efforts and resources. House Bill 18 passed, and it was signed into law in 2023. According to the Bozeman Daily Chronicle, that bill funded the first search and rescue training course ever available in Great Falls, which was held in late September of 2024, just weeks after Arden's 6th birthday. Rhonda talked to us about testifying for that bill and her thoughts, then and now, about what it has potential to accomplish. She is glad that a coordinator has been appointed, someone that families can have greater access to.
They're quick to respond, so I tried to convince everyone. I said, our voices are being heard. So I think we did make a difference just by, not backing down and continues moving forward. Those are our loved ones, and that's something that we're not going to do. We'll continue searching, demanding justice.
Meanwhile, for years, those coordinated teams on the Blackfeet Reservation have continued and continued and continued their searches, not just for Arden, but for Leo and Ashley, and for other men and women and children who have disappeared since the day Arden was last seen. Sometimes they have been able to locate individuals, but in other cases, as you know, they're still looking. As of February of 2026, the Bureau of Indian Affairs was still leading Arden's case, and they considered the investigation to be open. We did reach out to them for any updates on Arden, but as of this recording, we've not heard back from any agency. As for Rhonda, in that time, she established her Blackfeet MMIP headquarters at the Reservation Heritage Center, where volunteers, and everyone who helps is a volunteer, work to organize and follow up on cases. In May of 2025, Rhonda had a list of at least 100 MMIP cases to review. According to Theda Newbreast, a founding board member and master trainer and facilitator for the Native Wellness Institute, Rhonda's center has and does serve another purpose. quote, making a safe space for families left behind to heal. We spoke with Rhonda about what that center has meant for families and what new initiatives they've been working on, and what led them to launch the group a few years back. A need to organize, to create a support system, to demand justice.
It's all of the above. Like I always say, the dead can't cry out for justice, up to the living themselves to do so for them. We are their voice. And a lot of family members, I notice they are getting discouraged. I told not to do that. You have to continue on doing what you're doing, make yourself even louder, and get those stories out there.
Rhonda told me that in addition to food drives and direct care for people in the community who are struggling or unhoused, they have also begun working with Dr. Haley Omiso, enrolled member of the Hopi and a Blackfeet descendant, on forensic initiatives on the reservation. With a background in forensic science, specifically in anthropology, Dr. Omiso has experience with the kind of recovery that forensic anthropologists can specialize in, like finding and identifying bone. She's also helping with the DNA Drive initiative. As a board member of Okami Forensics, she's focused on collecting DNA samples in such a way that the Blackfeet Nation retains control over those samples, while still allowing for forensic testing. Rhonda told us that there have already been results, such as the location of an individual with ties to the Blackfeet tribe. She says that she hopes that the council will be supportive of Haley's efforts and that more tribal members will come forward to offer DNA samples. There are so many people missing, and all efforts to identify them are vital to Rhonda's mission.
And that's why I try to stress to the council that this is very important. This is what resolves a lot of cases on a Blackfeet reservation.
Those efforts could help Arden's case too, and Rhonda says that those answers are still desperately needed. The searchers, the family, the friends, none of them have forgotten. A conviction may have come, but it did not bring resolution.
What we want answers. I would like to have the individual, the perpetrator, step up and actually tell us. The family, that's the worst feeling a person could go through, is not knowing.
That's exactly what Asia told us throughout her interview, too. So we asked her what her family needs most, right now, to contribute to their ongoing search for Arden.
It's kind of everything. We don't really have the equipment ourselves. My uncle, Aaron, he has people he knows that have their group, but we want to make our own this summer. And it's kind of the weather, too. Our weather here is just kind of, you never know what you're going to get during the day. It could be sunny in the morning, and in the afternoon, it could be snowing. And I know if we were to ask people to come out and help us, I know that our community still thinks about her. I know they would really come out to help us. I know we can get our community involved again, just because our community knows that we don't have all the resources we need, that we only really have the help of our people. We only really have their help, and I know that they would show up for her. We're very, very grateful for Rhonda, because when we started to get into this MMIP group, we didn't know how many people were going through this same thing. We haven't been able to really advocate for her the way we wanted to, but now we can. We are able to put her story out there, with Rhonda helping us with the resources, helping us and showing us how to get her story out there. I know recently, this past summer, they did a photo shoot for the families who wanted to come in for their missing or murdered individual, and they were put on billboards. When we've seen all these people who are still looking all over the place, or, all the things that have actually happened within these past few years, it's a really heartbreaking thing to see, because it's just, you already know how they feel when you see them. The heartbreak, the continued heartbreak of not knowing and still trying to get that justice. So yeah, we would want the water searches as well as more of the land, just knowing that we just want to be able to cover the whole part of it, the land, the water, any part that we can cover. So what we're going to do this coming summer, we want to get her story out there farther than it has been. We know it's gotten far, but we want it to continue to go as far as it could, and we want it to stay alive. We will try our best to do a reward, but we just need to get everything situated in our own terms and be able to have a stable setting of what we need to do. So just from everyone out there, I would like for them to continue her story, share it anywhere, tell everybody about her. We just want her story to still be alive. We want to find her and we want to bring her home. Also, the people who are sharing her story, I would just like to say, please get the information right before you post it on her, because misinformation can really get our part off track if people think the wrong things about her story.
One frustration Asia returns to is misinformation that she says is still circulating about Arden's case, especially concerning dates. People share Arden's story without including when she went missing, and others respond as if she only just disappeared, and Asia and others have to step in to correct it. The family has a dedicated Facebook page you can follow, and they want all the details released to be right, because faulty information pulls their search off track. One thing that listeners can do, and that Arden's family would appreciate, would be to follow and share their official pages for Arden. After all, as everyone told us, she was just a baby, and they need to bring her home. Arden Marie Pepion was 3 years old when she went missing on April 22, 2021. She's a Native American female. At the time of her disappearance, she was approximately 3 feet tall and weighed around 30 pounds, with dark brown hair and brown eyes. Her ears are pierced. When last seen, she was wearing a gray pullover sweatshirt with Glacier printed across the front and black leggings. Anyone with information about Arden's whereabouts can contact the Bureau of Indian Affairs at 1-833-560-2065. Text BIA-MMU at 847-441 or email OJS_MMU@BIA.gov. While there had been a $10,000 reward in Arden's case, the family tells us that, to their knowledge, it is no longer available. Next time on The Fall Line, a deep dive into Michigan's coldest cases. If you know of a case that should be covered on The Fall Line, there's a link to our case submission form in the show notes. Thank you for listening. The Fall Line is an independent podcast, and we appreciate listener support. It allows us to do research, obtain FOIA, pay our content advisors, and support and donate to the causes we care about. Our therapy fund is paid for through Patreon and Apple Premium subscriptions. If you try out the products we advertise, please use our sponsor codes. It really helps. And please take a moment to rate and review our show in your podcast app of choice. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, please be sure to check your subscription to make sure that you are set for automatic downloads so that you don't miss an episode. My book, Lay Them to Rest, is out everywhere. Find out more through the link in our show notes. The Fall Line is created by Laura Norton and Brooke Hargrove. The show is written, hosted, researched, and produced by Laura Norton. Engineered by Southern Gothic Media and Rachel Boyd. Content advisement by Vic Kennedy. Special thanks to Liz Lipka.